All right, the next subcategory is there is needs to be racist and due to one own self. These are your own self bringing you down. This is your own mental self bringing you down. Let's take, for example, I can go home for most meetings of organizations I belong to. I feel somewhat tied in rather than isolated, out of place, numbered, unheard, held at a distance, or feared. So if you're going to an organization, and I think if anybody who's actually ever lived life know that there's tons of reasons why you may feel isolated from a group. Growing up poor, oh, my clothes might not fit in with the rest of this group, or one thing or another. But if we're talking about race, these are mental things. There would have to, you would have to say that there is someone who's prejudiced inside the group, or most of them are prejudiced inside the group, in order for you to feel that way. And that might be your own prejudice towards the people inside the group, which might be bringing you down. So, it might be important to fight your own prejudice to get over this mental obstacle. I can take a job with affirmative action employer without having coworkers on the job suspect I got this because of my race. Anybody who's ever worked, with a company or one, organization or another, finds out pretty quick, who are the workers and who are the slackers. You find this out pretty quick. If you're there because of affirmative action, it will show. And if you're not there because of affirmative action, it will show. So this one, this one's just a temporary one that, one way or another, it's going to show who you really are. If my day, week, or year is going badly, I need not ask each negative episode or situation whether it has racial overtones. Once again, this is just someone's own mental obstacle of this, and there's nothing I can do about other people's mental obstacles. I don't know, check my privilege on this one. It's like, this has nothing to do with me. If one person has a mental obstacle, how is this affecting me at all? So, on this one, I don't know what to say. I can be late to a meeting without having the lateness reflect on my race. Once again, this should reflect on you personally. Only the prejudice and bigots out there are going to actually reflect it on your race rather than you. You are an individual, and if you're a slacker, it's going to show and reflect on you personally. That it should do that. I can speak in public to a powerful group without putting my race on trial. This one is the assumption that powerful males are bigots and racists. And this is a bit ridiculous to me. And on this one, the door swings both ways. If I go up to Boyce Watkins, Black Power and Black Power Enrichment Program, whatever he has up there, and I spoke to that group, knowing that he's a bigot, having that will put my race on trial, in front of, powerful black men. That's assuming they're bigots. So this one is a bit ridiculous, but even if they are, it's your own mental state. You are who you are, and that should have you be better. The last category is majority privilege. These are privileges that are not necessarily white privilege, but just privileges as a majority. For example, if you're 5,000 pounds, you're going to have a hard time finding pants because you're a minority, and a lot of people may not cater to the minority. They cater to the majority because that's how you do most of their business. So these are not necessarily white privileges, but a majority privilege. For example, when I am told about our national heritage or about civilization, I am shown that people of my skin color is what made it what it is. I can be sure that my children will be given curricular material that testify the existence of my race. I'm going to call a little bit of BS on this one, but a little bit of truth. So here in the U.S., you learn U.S. history, and the majority of U.S. history may be white, and so you learn a lot about the white history because that's the majority. If you went to China, for example, and learned about Chinese history, okay, your race isn't, white's not going to be the majority there, and, white's not going to be talked about a lot there. So this is more of a majority thing, but a little bit of BS. The BS is things like when you go into world history, like example, mathematical history, you learn about algebra, and this is not necessarily a white thing. It's more of, if you learn, a lot of people know where the word algebra comes from, and you may learn a lot about Indians from India, learning where we get our numbers. And so this is not necessarily true. It's a bit of a BS. But I would agree partly that it's important to learn about your history. And I wouldn't mind, if there was a black history type curriculum that you can put into, I'd absolutely go for it if your school is majority black, or even if there's just a group of black people who would like that. Absolutely go for it. Second one is I can go into a music shop and count on finding music of my race represented. I laughed a lot on this one too. Like, there's not a lot of blacks that is well represented in the music aisle. But into the super and find the food I grew up with. Into a hairdresser shop and find someone who can deal with my hair. This one also depends on what community you are in. If you're black in a major white community, yeah, I can understand this might be hard for you to find. But if a white person went into a black community, yeah, also might be hard for the white person to find these things too. Or if a white person goes into a China, this is just a majority privilege. Moving on. I choose the blemish coverage. I can choose blemish covers or bandage in flesh color and have them more or less match my skin color. Yeah, this is scraping the bottom of the barrel. Everybody, whatever. There's people who just make fun of this one. This one's just pathetic. It's like really, really stretching this one. Anyways, moving on. I can remain oblivious of the language and customs of persons of color who constitute the world's majority without feeling in my culture any penalty for such oblivion. This one I might not understand. I'm just going to give my interpretation of it. If I am wrong, you have your own interpretation of this one, just let me know. But there are groups, for example, here in the United States, which do not learn English and grow up with their own customs and are absolutely oblivious to the rest of the country. They just stay in their own community without learning any language and doing their own thing. And they may do this their whole life. So on a global scale, I think that's what they're saying on a global scale is what the United States does, is that even though it might not be the majority, you can live in the United States without learning other languages and other cultures, even though you might be a minority. This one, I don't really see this as a privilege. I think they may be. I think it would be a privilege if you learned other cultures, because I think this might even be a disadvantage, because learning other cultures makes you a better person. Looking outside the world, outside the world you live in, you see things differently. But if you don't want to, and you're just a slacker, this might be an advantage. So it depends on how you look at this one. I'll just move on. I can criticize our government and talk about how much I fear its policies and behaviors without being seen as a cultural outsider. You might be a cultural outsider, and that's perfectly all right. That's what makes the U.S. great, is that we have tons and tons of different groups out there fighting for different things. And everyone stands up for what he or she believes in. But the one thing that irritates me is that there may be groups out there that may say that they have not been heard and cry and whine about that. But when it comes time to vote, stand up and be counted, suddenly they're silent. That irritates me more than anything. It's like, when it comes time, stand up and be counted, because that's what's in place for us to live in this civilized nation. But anyways, those are the major points on the white privilege checklist. The other things I've seen on the internet is people just cherry picking white privilege things, like, oh, this one white guy did one thing and this other person of color did another thing, and so we see white privilege and they cherry pick and other things. I just, shrug that off. That's just retarded. But you see a lot of that. Anyways, hope you enjoyed it. That's the end, and you have yourself a good day. Bye.